Very warm welcome to everyone at the third day of the IRMI Annual Conference. And we start the day with an absolutely amazing panel. Our discussion is about academia industry partnerships. And it's a pleasure to invite Dr. Shirsendu Mukherjee here to chair the session. Over to you, Shirsendu, to run the session.
Thank you, Savita. I thank IRMI for putting in a beautiful panel. Actually, the entire event, 3-4 days event, is exciting in all respects with beautiful discussions and various elements from science to translation to policy to various funding opportunities and other thing. And putting this session on academia industry partnership is one of the exciting sessions, and I am delighted to chair it along with my esteemed panelists. I think who are expert in their fields, coming up from industry, from academia, from a think tank, from policy approach, running a startup or innovation ecosystem. And it is an exciting panel which will bring in various perspectives in academia industry interactions and challenges faced thereof. A quick introduction to my panelists. I will request panelists to introduce themselves when they speak, but just to give you a brief to everybody to brief about who are there with us in the panel today. I am Shirsendu Mukherjee. I work with an organization called BIRAC, which is Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, a public sector undertaking under Department of Biotechnology, and I head the Grand Challenges India portfolio, which is a joint initiative, international initiative of Department of Biotechnology with Gates Foundation and Wellcome Trust. So I am the mission director of that. Basically a medical microbiologist by training, almost now 3 decades had experience in working in academic environment, industry, and now last 12 years in funding agency. I have a privilege to have the Dr. Sinkar with us, who brings a rich industry experience into the panel today. And when he speaks, he will definitely bring out what perspective he looks at academia when he looks at collaborative work with academia, bringing into industry and taking it forward. I have Dr. Radhika with me, who brings the on collaborating, sitting on in an academic environment and working with Atal mission and things like that. How bring in that sort of collaboration into an ecosystem. Dr. Ishita will talk about the policy challenges and if some amendment is needed, but sitting in academic environment, how should she looks at it. And finally, we have Dr. Premnath with us, who heads incubation center, a venture center, and he works with a lot of funding agencies. He heads a TTO, so he will bring that perspective into it. So we have a very, very beautiful panel today to talk about challenges, and I will request our attendees today, if they have any questions, at the end they can put it in the chat box, and I will request Savita to flag them off to me, or Ajay to flag them off to me, so that we can take it up. So to start with, I will give you a very short perspective on how I look at academia industry collaboration, been working with the academic institute, the funding agency, and the industry. I think what happened in last 10 years or 7 to 10 years, there has been a sea change in academia industry collaboration work. Initially there were a lot of bottlenecks. If we see why academia would talk to industry, or why industry should go to academia in looking at the innovations, or innovations, or giving them projects to work on, there were a lot of challenges in between. And these challenges started with initially the confidentiality of it. Industry used to fear that the academic setups might, the information may not be, which is very important for the industry to keep it safe. That was sometimes a challenge for the industry. The academia used to think that the industry, if they talk to industry, their innovation might go out and they will not be properly compensated. So that was the initial thinking with what it started. If you see 10 years back, there was a sort of a a roadblock, you can say, or a bottleneck, which actually forced these collaborations not to fructify. There were very few collaborations which we used to put to, and we will hear from our panelists, esteemed panelists today, what challenges there. But slowly, with the evolution of the system, change in the translational paradigm of basic research converting into translational, making IP regime easy and friendly, I think the ecosystem changed widely. And thanks to lot of organizations which came to India, like the Welcome Trust, which brought their translational initiative of affordable healthcare in India, which I was fortunate to lead. Then the Welcome Trust, DBT India Alliance, BIRAC came in, TDB, a lot of other funding agencies all joined in together. And I think some catalytic glue was added into these relationships where programs were initiated to develop jointly between academia and the industry together, which can be funded jointly, or academia was allowed to, collaborate with the industry, and the industry would get the fund to establish their proof of concept. That sort, and there are various programs which were brought into the ecosystem by the funding agencies globally as well as nationally to bridge this gap where the confidence between both the industry has to have a confidence, because they are going to do the business out of it. There has to be an exit strategy, there has to be a business plan into it, and academia needs to be rewarded for their innovation. Both were very critical element into it. So I think, and the evolution has taken place, and now we see lot of work going together. Sitting in the funding agency, we see a lot of joint application coming to us, where academia and industry are jointly partnering. And I'll not describe, there are various funding pots which can be taken up together, where academia can jointly write and grant application with the industry, and it can be supported. Thereby, both are compensated. The program is de-risked to a great level, so that the benefit sharing can be literally equally distributed depending upon the contribution each have made. And also, excuse me for my bad throat. I have been suffering from bad throat, so I might be taking water in between. So, so now these literally glues have made the relationship stronger. And now I think we see a lot of industry academia collaboration fructifying into major success. I can take one example which I can tell you. In my Welcome Trust days, we supported a concept. It is basic innovation of supporting medical technology area called Smart Cane, which was used for visually challenged people. A unique innovation which came out from IIT Delhi, an academic innovation, but they had an IP protected to it, but it was struggling to go to the industry level. And the industry was brought into it. So a joint a company called Phoenix Medical System in Chennai joined together with them. A joint application was written. It was funded. Then a validation partner was brought into it to see that how the innovation can be validated further. So you need to have a validation partner. And then when it was validated, and we could get a very affordable, accessible smart cane, which was globally available at around $300. In India now it is available for roughly around 3,000 rupees. Smart canes are generally used for visually challenged people, and smart canes are canes which can easily identify knee-height obstacles, and you can walk past those obstacles without any disturbance and without any obstruction to the visually challenged people. So what here happened was a team was developed between academia, industry, a validation partner, and they submitted a joint application which the committee evaluated, and they supported all three of them to take the innovation to the next level. And then innovation, which was a very strong science. Any innovation cannot work without science. We have to have a strong science. 60% is strong science, 60 to 70%. But 30% is how you write the business plan, how you write the exit strategy, how you write the IP plan, how we have the regulatory plan or clinical trial plan. It may be vary depending upon the project. Is very strong. So where industry contribution is essential for academic innovation to grow forward. So that is why we have and the funding agencies are applying glue to it and taking it forward. There are lots and lots of examples which are showing confidence of academia and industry is growing. Similarly, the industry is also supporting academia, is coming out to support academia. I'll not say in a big way, but it has started to support in a big way. And funding agencies are adding glue to it to go take it further. So I think this is what important is today, in India's context of India, where we need to bring in, we are the largest vaccine manufacturers globally, largest diagnostics manufacturers globally, medical technology industry is one of the biggest. So here, and we have very strong academic backbone. We have best institutes in this country, best technology partners in this country, institutes in this country. So I think they have to join together to bring India to a level where we can literally commercialize our innovations in the academic scenario to an industry level. and take innovations from India, not only in India, but beyond India. So we always call it in India, for India, and beyond. That has to be our purpose. With this thing, I think this is the thought. I think I will now go to our panelists one by one, and I'll first go to Dr. Sinkar. He comes from an industry, and has been a very strong industry backbone into he knows industries in and out, and he is now also connected to academia. So, sir, what do you think are the challenges industry looks at when it talks to academia, and what confidence building measure industry needs so that they can literally glue well to take an academic innovation to a level where it can be industrially exploited? Over to you, Dr. Sinkar.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mukherjee. I hope I am audible. Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah,
You're
okay,
audible.
very, very good. Yeah, thank you very much. Little bit about myself. Like Dr. Mukherjee, I'm also a microbiologist. I did my bachelor's and master's in microbiology, and my PhD was in molecular biology, and postdoctoral was in the same area. Well, I happen to kind of know industry as well as a bit of academia, because before going to industry, I was an academic. Yeah. So I have kind of a, I can't speak from one side. I will try to kind of give a view which would be industry view, but there would be some academic elements incorporated into that. I will keep it brief, but I will make 3 statements. I would have liked to elaborate on those, but I can't because of time. But 3 statements which are, I think, important looking at the future, looking at the country. Yeah, if you look at Indian economy, I think it is soon becoming $5 trillion economy. In fact, some estimates show by 2031 will become 7.5 billion economy. Yeah, third largest in the world in nominal GDP, and third largest in PPP. Yeah, why it is important? Because if Indian economy has to grow, the Indian industry has to grow. Yeah, if Indian industry has to grow, yeah, it has to be more competitive. If it has to be more competitive, it can't remain competitive just by producing more and more of the same, but it has to be more innovative. Yeah. And that's where I think academia comes in. That's my first statement. My second statement is, if you look at India's progress on Global Innovation Index, yeah, we were around 90 maybe in 2010-11. Today in 2022, we are at 40th position. So we have climbed quite a lot. Yeah. But remember, there are countries like Malaysia which are ahead of us. Countries like Singapore are way, way ahead of us. So what do we need to do to go ahead on the Global Innovation Index? Again, the same thing. We have to be innovative. And where these innovations are going to come from, and the answer lies in what we are going to discuss today. The third statement, and that's my final statement, is that the Indian economy is becoming increasingly a knowledge-driven economy or knowledge-based economy. Yes, so what does it mean again? You have to have mechanisms of knowledge creation, and you have to have mechanisms for the knowledge utilization. Now, who creates this knowledge? This knowledge gets created in the industry, it gets created in academia. But what is expected from academia by industry is that they produce something which they cannot do in-house, because they don't have that scientific strength, or they don't have the time, or they don't have the right kind of people. Yeah. So that long-term view, long-term knowledge generation has to be done by the academia. Yeah. Now, as Dr. Mukherjee was saying, I think we have made good progress in that area. There are lots of initiatives by various agencies. But at the same time, I mean, one statistic shows, it may not be very accurate, but still I think it should be mentioned, that if you look at academia industry interaction, yeah, India has not progressed as much. India has progressed in terms of Global Innovation Index ranking. So there is something lacking, and that needs to be corrected. Yeah, and that has to be corrected both by industry as well as academia. And what we need to do, that's what I'll spend the next 4-5 minutes. Yeah, I think one thing that needs to be realized by both industry as well as academia, that India has to progress, India has to increase its economic size, and that will happen only through creating value. And that value, in terms of innovation and the new businesses, can only be done in today's world by by academia and industry being the part of the same value chain. And the important thing is the same value chain. Yeah. Unless we realize that we have to go tandem, we have to go back and forth. Academia needs industry, industry needs academia. Unless we ingrain that in our mind, in our brain, I think we'll be remaining in the old world where it becomes I versus you, industry versus academia. It's not industry and academia. Actually, we should be industry plus academia. That's the mindset we'll have to. And that becomes really important for creating that value, unlocking the value. Yeah, and then only industry would grow, then only the economy would grow, and then only the GDP, the per capita GDP of India would grow. Yeah. Now, coming to the nitty gritty, so the question that whether we need to work together, I think that has been answered. There is no alternative. We have to work together. We have to be in tandem. We have to be together in good, in bad, all times. We have to be together. There are no options. Right. Now, while working for industry, what I observed that I will share. See, we have a large R&D center in India, and we have globally R&D centers at various places. So one of the kind of sad things which I always observed was that the integration of our European R&D into European ecosystem was extremely good. In US, it was the same. In India, it is far better than most of the other industries in the country. But compared to the integration I see in Europe, it is still very, very small. Yeah, why does it happen? Yeah, one thing is Indian industry basically falls into two types. Yeah, the large industry which is looking at technologies at an early stage. So they would like to collaborate when your TRL levels are say 1, 2, yeah, because they want to then work with you and take those forward. So those are the organizations which have large R&D centers and large in-house capability. Yeah, but there are a lot of industries which will not touch any technology unless it is a TRL 6 or 7. So it's a challenge to academia. How do you cater to both? And there are different solutions, but I don't think this is the platform for that. Uh, but coming to my perspective about what I observed that we need. Okay, let me put it slightly differently. What we need to do from academic side, make industry come to them and work with them, and what are the systemic problems there, and how and I'm not going to go to the solutions again, a different platform, but what are the systemic problems? One systemic problem is the trust. Yeah, we tend not to trust each other, and we tend to operate in an environment, it is I versus you. That has to disappear. We have to realize, as I said earlier, we are the part of the same value chain, and if one is missing, that value creation for the country, for the consumers, is not going to happen. Yeah, so the trust is something which you need to develop, and that has to be from mutual, that has to be from both sides. And that will happen only if you develop mutual empathy, understand each other's position, and try to be as accommodative as possible. Yeah, because usually these, I mean, there is a statement made by, I think, Leslie Thompson. He was head of EPA, SRC. Somebody asked him the question, what academia and industry interaction make work? He said, you have to be in it for long term, and you have to be generous to each other. Yeah. So if you go for short term, it's not going to work. It's a process where you have to go long term. You have to go through it together, understand each other. So it has to be long term. It has to be trustful. Yeah. And the mindset has to change. It has to be the same value chain. Then the other thing that usually happens are the timelines. And these timelines are not only is not the context, it is not in the context of the inventors or the people who are doing actual work. This is also for the organization, for the TTOs. Yeah. Often even signing a confidentiality agreement takes months. That's because most of the time the formats are not ready. Yeah, the systems are lacking. So and I understand there are a lot of people in this meeting who are actually going to look after the TTUs or the technology transfer associated units. And one thing that you have to do is you have to get your internal systems absolutely right. So when somebody comes, immediately the confidentiality agreement should come forward. You should have thought about the IPR sharing, because that's usually the issue that comes up when you sign MOU. Who owns the IP? How do you how does the industry can use the IPR? What are the terms and conditions? You cannot start thinking about it. Uh, when you start negotiation, there has to be a policy that has to be ready. So get your systems right after the trust, and
Sure.
ensure, yeah, and ensure that your timelines when it comes to delivering on the goals has to be maintained, has to be met. And if there are any issues, those should be flagged well before the deadline, because industry works on very tight deadlines, and if you happen to be at TRL 5 or 6, your deadlines become sacrosanct. So understand that need and try to be meeting those needs.
Sure, Dr. Sinkar. I think we'll get
Yeah.
back to you with the next steps onto it. But what it came from you is very important. We have to, I versus you, we have to change that mindset fully. We have to make a, value chain perspective where academia industry works together.
Yeah.
And finally, the handholding of the academia to talk to the industry. And you rightly brought out the point of TTOs. We at the National Biopharma Mission, and I will ask Premnath when he speaks about what the role the TTO, he's heading one of our TTOs. So I think TTOs have been a very important step forward by the government to create TTOs in the academic environment and in the incubation environment around this country to literally handhold the academic people to CDAs, IPs, and other things, so that they can talk to the industry with confidence, and
Yeah.
industry has confidence to talk to them.
Right. If you won't mind, I'll just make 3 statements and I will end. That will take less than 15 seconds. Yeah. Some things which I see working as we evolve is the mobility of people. Yep. And academic people moving to industry, industrial people moving to academia on a temporary basis, that should be done. The second thing that works quite often is a co-location, but that happens at an evolved stage. If industry has its setup on academic campus, that usually helps. And uh, the third point I was thinking about, one is mobility, co-location. I think these are the main 2
Yeah, yeah.
points.
You will have one more chance to
Yeah,
speak, Dr. Sinkar, when we have the final way forward. So
yeah,
we'll come back to you during that
yeah.
time.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think very important points you brought out, which trust, which are moves around trust, and a couple of suggestions you made: movement of people from academia to industry, co-location of industry in academic environment. So the startup incubation ecosystem is, I
Yeah.
think, aimed at building that sort of environment. A very good point. Now let me move to Dr. Radhika to bring the academic perspective into how academia looks at while talking to industry per se. Dr. Radhika, can you quickly introduce yourself and give your thoughts, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shishendu, and thank you, IRMI, for giving this opportunity. So I'm Radhika Trikha. I'm working presently as a policy fellow with Department of Science and Technology. I'm hosted at one of the Centers for Policy Research established at Indian Institute of Sciences. So my core research work is in domain of public-private partnerships, and one of the focus area of PPP is definitely industry-academia interactions. So what previously I have done, I have studied various industry academia case studies, not only nationally but internationally also. But giving context in this meeting about what are the academic side for the industry academia interactions. So I'm happy to share a few insights. But before that, we all must credit that how an academic field of India is strong. Like we are the third largest education system in the world. We have huge network of universities, be it a central university, state universities, or institutions of national importance. And we have huge setup, more than around 500 national research laboratories. So the academic potential is quite huge in India. Uh, we have such a good academic potential, yet the university industry linkages in the country are quite at a nascent or infancy state. While I pass this statement, people who are from IIT background or from some premier institutes like ISIS, they might not agree, because in IITs they have that culture of having an industry interaction, be it in form of a consultancy or be it in form of a sponsored research. But the question lies when we talk to state universities, are they having such platforms to engage with the industry? Is there any kind of a specified communication channel? Like while in my feedback case studies, when I was talking to the academic researchers and the scientists working there and faculty there, they said that we are so overloaded with teaching and doing research, we hardly get time to actually invest ourselves in promoting their research or marketing their research to the industry. So very few of the universities, they have a proper setup, or we call that as an industry academia enabler ecosystem. We do have in IITs, we do have in some specified national research laboratories, they have sponsored research industrial consultancy cells, they have industry academia cells. Now number of technology transfer offices are coming up, legal units are coming up. Their job is to take the research, concise them from the academic side, and be a kind of a facilitator with the academic, with the industrial side. Like to quote an example, like we have IIT Madras. So they have a very fabulous system of having a credit given to the industry once they collaborate with the academia, be it for some workshop, be it for some seminar, or be it for like giving a support to some industrial program. So the IIT Madras gives the recognition and credit to the industry partner who has collaborated with them for any academic or administrative activity. And that credits are further utilized when industries have to come on board with the academic side to pursue collaborative research from their incubator park, or from like IIT Madras incubator is well known example how it came into working and how impactful it is. So that credits help them, their industries, to get the linkages with the incubation setup or innovation setup at the system. Like if we talk about IIC Bangalore, they have a dedicated department or a dedicated unit, Society for Innovation Development. So they have three separate arms. Like one arm would be dealing only with the large corporates, the other arm would be dealing with the medium corporates, and the third arm will do with budding innovators, entrepreneurs. So these three different arms will give them a strategic importance, and how they will carry out the matchmaking with the faculty and the research that is carried out at IC Bangalore. Another example I would like to give is about the Institute of Chemical Technology, that has been ranked number one in terms of industry academia collaboration in India. Uh, that is another aspect I will share, how the ranking or a kind of a facilitation for industry academia is happening in India. Is like, do we have any kind of a ranking system, like which all institutes are doing industry academia? But before that, the ICT Mumbai example. So the when I interacted with the faculty, the interesting fact came. They said that 80% of their income, the money that they are getting in their pocket, that comes from the consultancy and sponsor research project, and 30% component is their salary component in their total income of the what they earn in a year. So that's quite fascinating how ICT has regularized their policies, so that they are promoting the faculty to directly jump into these consultancy sponsor research projects. The bureaucratic hindrances are very less. They have a very smooth connect with the industry. I think so these are one of the key challenges that we face in academia to pursue the industry. Do they have that marketing skills? Do they have the communication? They do have channels or not? Or do they have that much time to approach the industry and get them on the board? Then another practice that is coming up is the practice professor of practice. That is one of the fabulous steps that Ministry of Education has taken to attract the industry people to come on the board, and they start teaching our students and be it a part of the governing system of the academic institute, be on the board of the governance to decide what kind of a curriculum is required, because it's high time that we have to have a mandatory representation from the industry. The triple ITs that are coming up, we call them as the PPP institutes of the country. So they have a mandatory clause that industry representative have to be on the board of governance, and that will decide whether the projection of the academic institute, whether they have an industry viewpoint or not, that has to be taken care. So I'm sure the academic side has to change their priorities. We do understand that basic sciences, fundamental sciences are very important, but we have to evolve from basic to fundamental to the industrial R&D, because the advanced research cannot be done without the basic sciences. So that orientation has to be changed in an academic setting. So in terms of challenges, if other challenges, like I mentioned about, there is ICT is being ranked as a #1 institute in terms of industry academia interaction. So that ranking is carried out by CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, but there is no such formal kind of a ranking or evaluation that is done for industry academia. Although this is done in many other developed nations, they actually have kept industry academia interaction, or how much of a collaboration they have done with industry, as one of the clause for the promotion of a faculty, or one of the incentivization mechanism for the faculty. But sadly in India we do not have any such specific form of industry academia evaluation framework for our faculty members. That can be as one of the impediment why academia are not able to ties that much of notch with industry. It's always like whenever we talk to experts, they always say it is the faculty oriented industrial collaboration, how much of connection he has used or she has used to bring the industry on a board with them. It not overall the academic setting has done that, but it's my connect, it's my contacts, it's my networking that has done it. So if there is some specific incentivization mechanism, not only for academia but also for industry, that can be a very good incentivization mechanism. So yeah, there are certain way forwards that I'll definitely discuss at the end. Over to
Thank
you,
you,
Dr.
Ravita.
Shashendra.
I think for giving the overall perspectives, what you did was, there are two buckets of institutes in India. One are, what you named IICTs or ISCs, ISERs or IITs, which have industry connect one way or the other. But the challenge, what we, as you rightly placed, is the university system of research which we are running. There, the basic challenge is how to handhold innovation. There is good research going on there as well. So I think how we can connect that, and these TTOs, what you described is how they can, and these teaching staff have teaching priorities as well. But after doing that stuff, how they can write grants, how they can connect to industry, and how they can be rewarded if they bring in industry partnership together. That is a gap. I think it is being addressed in some ways or the other, but the university system, which is the main backbone of our academia, IITs, ISERs or ISCs, or IICTs, you name few institutes which are the front runners. So I think they are doing excellently well. But I think this also needs to be bridged in. I think if we have time, we'll come back to you on the way forward how we can do it. But I'll not. Like to go to Dr. Ishita for her thoughts on overall. Well, you have worked in various levels. So what you think is, Dr. Ishita, you can bring in, to catalyze these collaborations together, Dr. Ishita.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here, and a very good afternoon to all my esteemed panelists and all the people who are attending from different places in the country and the world. Um, I have a slightly different opinion. Anyways, before I get started, let me briefly introduce myself. I am not a science graduate. I am an MBA with close to 16, 17 years of experience in working with startups, early stage investment, technology, commercialization area. Perhaps the only non-science panelist here, and maybe in the entire seminar. But the fact that I am here speaking as a panelist signifies the importance how closely technology needs to go hand in hand with commerce and business. And if I am to speak at a personal level, I think that there are no challenges. Take the example of COVID. Everyone was working together, whether it was industry, there was academia, there were research labs, MSMEs, citizens of the country, politicians, government, and everyone was putting their best foot forward. When there was a crisis, international of an international level, people were working together. So yes, there are challenges now that the pressure is gone. People have gone back to their own pace and they have gone back to their own priorities. Um, if required, if the country needs it, the collaboration will happen. It's already happening. Dr. Mukherjee has talked about it. My other colleagues have, panelists have talked about it. So it's happening. I guess largely where the things take a backseat or where the problem comes in is basically about the different languages that the industry talks and what the academicians and the faculty members or researchers and scientists talk. There is a long journey to cover, I completely agree, but it's because of the industry being more focused on results, on products, on applications, and the researchers or the academicians talking more about improving the technology, improving the science further, rather than building a product or a application out of it and thinking it from the society or commercialization perspective. A simple solution that I can offer over here is to make larger use of translators. So there is, DBT Welcome Trust has done an amazing job. BIRAC has created an entire biotech startups based ecosystem in the country, which is first of its kind. There are close to 1,000 incubators that are supported by the government that are there in the country. I think if more use of business incubators can be made, and if every lab and every academic institution can simply attach themselves to a business incubator which is close to them, a science and technology based business incubator in the, locationally, regionally close to them, that will help these scientists, academicians, and faculty get all the benefits of the industry collaboration, because then they don't have to individually reach out to various different kinds of industries, large or small. The incubator is already doing that for them. And whatever is the relevant fit, the incubator can do the matchmaking. So a good part of the task of reaching out to the industry is taken away from the hands of the academicians. And then the other benefits, like the guidance on converting the technology into a business or a product, that also comes along with it, the visibility, the contacts, the network, and low cost office space, and those other benefits are a part of the incubation ecosystem that is there. From the perspective of the industry, any innovation, any patent, any invention, till it does not have a business plan, till it does not have a way to commercialize or make sense in the market, they are not going to be interested. So I would encourage everyone, the researchers, and most of the people here who are listening to us, they are the persons who would be the ones their research, therefore making the industry happy and at the same time getting rewarded themselves for it. Uh, very briefly, I know time is short, very briefly sharing an experience from Atal Innovation Mission, where I was a founder member and have been working there till about a couple of months ago. We launched a program called AIM Prime, and I see Dr. Premnath has joined the panel, and I'm sure he will speak in more detail about it as well. AIM Prime, we brought together scientists, incubators, and science-based startups in a small virtual room, and together we trained them over a period of 9 months on all aspects of starting a business and converting their technologies into a full-fledged business which sells in the market. Taught them about how do you identify your target market, how do you what are your risks, and how do you identify your risks and mitigate them, how do you get them funded, so on and so forth. And these 20 projects, in a period of 9 months, they were able to raise 20 crores, the last that I knew of it. Perhaps Dr. Premnath has a new number for us by now. But that is the kind of ability that is there, which exists. Our scientists are very talented, our academicians are renowned. In fact, a lot of faculty members teaching in universities abroad are of Indian origin. So there's no dearth of talent. I think what the missing piece is about converting that talent into products and solutions for the market, right? There were other interventions also at Atal Innovation Mission that I can talk about, but I will keep it to just one example for the time being, and maybe come back to it later if we have more time. To conclude, I would say that the government is doing it split. It's creating forums. There are pathways where the industry and academia can talk to each other, but at the end of the day, it is the scientific community that will have to learn the language of the industry and vice versa. The Prime Minister has been urging the scientific community to take the technologies from the lab to the land. The onus is on us to make it happen. So please make use of incubators. It is one more point that I would like to mention over here is that because a lot of audience here are people who may be research administrators. So at the time of designing the research grant, at the time of designing a project, at the beginning of the research itself, if the scientific community could think of what is the exact product or application or solution for which this research could be used, and think about it from a slightly business perspective from the beginning itself, it might help the entire translation or the conversion process. Yeah? So I think I'll pause for now, and I'll be up for any questions later on. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you, Ishita, for your thoughts. I think rightly bringing in the importance of incubation networks to the scientific community, so that that can be a place to literally, incubate their ideas into and ignite and incubate their ideas and take to a level where the industry can talk to them, and thereby the role of these incubators also come into play, where they can talk to the industry on behalf of academia. And a very beautiful segue now to call in Dr. Premnath. I think he works at very reputed CSIR lab. He heads the incubation center. He also heads Atal Prime, as you rightly said, and he also held one of our flagship TTOs, which is doing exceedingly well. So I think the role of these multiple groups, which I think Premnath leads, how it catalyzes hand-holding between academia and industry. Let us hear from Dr. Premnath, please. Over to you, Premnath.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Premnath.
Okay. Well, this is a topic which can go on and on. So please do stop me when my time runs out. Yeah. First of all, very happy to be in the same panel with all of them who I have interacted with in the past. Dr. Sinkar is our mentor for our tech transfer office, Dr. Mukherjee in Venture Center. He's the chair of the governing council for that. Of course, Ishita was the backbone of the program for AIM Prime. She is the one who drove that and drove me also to do best as best as I could. And of course, Radhika I've interacted with in the policy sessions as well. I'm going to, since the audience consists of a lot of people who are going to be research managers and also technology managers, I thought I'll share some perspectives which might be relevant to them in their work. First of all, a little bit of background. I'm actually a chemical engineer specialized in polymers and biomedical products. I'm a believer in science being put to use to create impact. And that is something which I learned in my PhD, because we did work with a clinical center and an industry to rapidly take a product to market. And today that product is has been implanted in 1 million patients. And that kind of satisfaction, I think, is something which drives me, in the sense I want to see more of that if possible. It's a little bit of a greed over there, but that's now the question was, how do you make that happen? And when we started doing product development, technology development in NCL, we succeeded in some. We have a maxillofacial implant product which is in the market, but we also noticed that transferring technology to a company industry depends a lot also on who is on the other side. Okay, they have to also share your vision. They should not be limiting the vision of what is possible for you to stay excited. And also, the opportunity to create full impact should be there. And very often, some of these activities require many stakeholders to come into place. And one also learns that the ecosystem is very important and it's not merely a one-to-one transaction, right? So these realizations basically forced me to start thinking about how do you create more delivery vehicles, and what is the right vehicle to try and take things into market as well. That's when I had a chance to study some of this in UK, and then one of the places I saw was a barn in Oxford, which is today the Begbroke Science Park, and I was inspired by that, thinking that if it's possible in a barn there, we should be able to do it as well, right? So we started working on the Venture Center, which is an incubator out here in Pune as well, looking at delivery vehicles and more specifically entrepreneurship. And why entrepreneurship? Because I think that is probably one of the best ways to do to deliver impact sustainably and scalably. You can do only so much with charity. You can only do so much with grants. If you want to take it ahead and scale it up, you probably need some kind of an entrepreneurial vehicle, and that's what we looked at. The other thing as a scientist that interests me is the fact that most the true startups are foresight driven, and foresight is something natural to many scientists. We look at the future, what is possible, and that is something which is very critical as well. Okay, now let's come down to a few other points. So industry, academia, partnerships, as Dr. Sinker rightly said, there's a lot of empathy that needs to first be there in order to work smoothly. That basically means we need to understand each other's side, right? So let's start with that first, right? First of all, I think we need to be good communicators to our scientists on why they should be interested in working with the industry, right? The first important thing to keep in mind is that if you want to see use of your capabilities in the short or medium term, it will happen through industries only. Otherwise, you're not likely to see that happen at all, right? The only way to translate technology capabilities sustainably and scalably and realize its full potential is through things like entrepreneurship, which is also a part of the industry eventually, right? Most of the real world problems that you look at and challenges will come from industries, right? And it will also give you opportunities for your students and also financing resources for you to be able to do work as well. Most importantly, one mindset issue which I try to tell people is there's a virtuous circle of research, innovation, industry, right? It's important to understand that at the end of the day, if there are no corporates who make a profit on new knowledge that is created, you cannot finance new knowledge creation, right? And that has to be very clear. Taxes also come from profits. Charities also come from profits, right? So at the end of the day, if you don't have profits, you don't have a case. So business is extremely important. Industry is very important when it comes to commercializing research. So just to further the point on empathy, let's understand perspectives. You will often find that academia likes to look at intellectually challenging problems, right? And the priorities are publishing, peer recognition, grant fundraising, and so on. But the common complaint you will hear is from the industry that, first of all, there's lack of focus. There are too many things, too many different projects, too many students, too many things happening simultaneously. The end goal focus is missing. That means you want to do something, you want to achieve some midterm goals of a publication, but you don't look at the end goal of taking it all the way. The processes are slow, right? It's not cost effective very often. You're loading a lot of overheads sometimes. It's the decision-making process in academia is very complex. And this is clearly something which all of you can contribute to in improving, which is it's unpredictable very often. You don't know who will take a decision when, in what time frame, and what strings it will be attached with going ahead into the future, right? There's not enough depth in defining first-hand problem definitions. Many academics tend to go with second-hand problem definitions. They don't go into the real world to understand enough of the problem itself to define those problems. Very often academics prefer model systems than real life complex systems. And of course, as Dr. Mukherjee mentioned, issues like confidentiality, leaking IP platforms, and so on and so forth are concerns, right? Now, on the other hand, industry and startups bring in certain other perspectives, and you must understand that also. So, startups, for example, are resource constrained but are focused, dedicated, highly motivated, and very often they leverage speed and nimbleness. And they can share important problem definitions and work with you as an academic, which may or may not happen with large companies, right? So there is a benefit that you have working with small companies because the first time in-depth problem definitions that you get a chance to work with. Industry, unfortunately, sometimes has a cash cow focus. That means they look at their cash cows and not necessarily as much at what's going to disrupt their cash cows tomorrow. And that can be a negative, but on the other hand, they do look at least at the cash cows, right? So there is an opportunity to work on it. There's a short, medium-term focus, and they may not support necessarily detailed mechanistic work, and therefore the academics shy away from it sometimes. And it's not very always very sure if they're sharing the most important work, and it depends a lot on who the champion on the industry side is on the in terms of industry projects as well. So in this you will notice a few things. One, clearly understanding the language of both parties, being on the same wavelength, which is having empathy and sensitivity to each other, and the mindset is clearly important. And academics should not have a negative view of a for-profit thinking, right? That is the first thing I find is very important. Trust and respect, you can have collaborations only when you have those two, right? And you cannot do that otherwise. And this formalizing and catalyzing funding and using catalytic funding to formalize projects is something which I find very useful in creating these kind of collaborations. And as Dr. Sinkar and Dr. Mukherjee mentioned, technology innovation management capabilities are very underestimated as in many of our institutions. People don't understand that you need to have people who can connect, who can bridge, who can talk the same language between the two parties. And that becomes a very important activity. And that's where the RTTOs that Dr. Mukherjee mentioned is so important. It's meant to build a body of a set of capabilities, people who can talk the same language, right? The ability to put policies in place, processes in place, create frameworks for decision making. So these are some things which I think one must understand when we are talking about this. I'll just close with a couple of quick points. There are a few examples I want to just tell you where it has been useful. One, of course, is that it's always useful to start relationships with small projects, consulting, and so on. And Radhika mentioned about ICT. Clearly, they have done very well in that. It's good to become an expert in the field, in the industry sector, so that they come to you, right? Otherwise, you are thinking that your academic knowledge is more than enough. Second thing is executive education programs are a good way to network and to reach out to industry players. The third is technology showcases. We have been doing technology showcases under RTTOs, and we have found that many academics are very happy about getting on such kind of programs. I'll put a link on the chat box for those who are interested. And they are really looking forward to finding partners. And it's important for many of us as managers to facilitate such showcases as well. Startups and spin-offs as vehicles is something which we need to look at more carefully because it brings in a larger pool of talent. We don't limit ourselves to only the people at our disposal in the college or university, but we look a little wider. And also, it brings in many more stakeholders and has mechanisms to incentivize many more stakeholders. So in NCL, we have been able to do a few spin-offs. We are still building on it. We hope we will show considerable success. But in AIM Prime, as Ishita mentioned, we were able to explore and experiment with some of these models in a different way. And as Ishita said, overall we had great success. Of course, there were pockets where we struggled as well, which was bound to happen. But nonetheless, those are models that one can look at all. And final thing is, I think somebody mentioned incubators as well. See, I believe that we should create as many places to create so-called useful collisions between academics and industry folks, right? And that is incubators, one of them. Dr. Sinker mentioned mobility, core location. All of these are other ways to do them. And I think these are very, very important for promoting industry academia collaborations in a real practical way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Premnath. I think you rightly said in the beginning that this discussion takes hours to conclude, and what all you said, each and every point, if I analyze it, holds true for bringing this. And not only you, Dr. Sinkar, Ishita, Radhika said, needs to be fruitified in one way or the other to take it forward. The role which your institute and organization playing and others are supporting to it, literally catalyzing these CBMs, if you confidential building measures, the enabling environment which everybody is creating, has really helped us. I thought of going of a second round for a way forward, but the time says we have only 4 minutes, so 3.5 minutes. So there are a couple of suggestions has come up in the chat boxes. That the suggestion has come that in the PhD program, an industry exposure has to be done, or the student who is doing PhD could be exposed to industry. Then IITs and premier institutions, we need to learn from IITs. That couple of suggestions has come. But before I close, so I think these suggestions can be read out and taken into consideration. I will give 30 seconds to each one of you to just give way forward, just 30 seconds. Dr. Sinkar, we'll start from you and end with Premnath. 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay. I think earlier I said about what needs to be done. So I'll just add one more point because otherwise it will become repetition. Just one point. I think whenever you have large projects within an academic institute, try to involve somebody senior enough from industry, and then in whatever honorary capacity you can. Yeah, but somebody senior enough who has empathy for academia, who understand what needs to be done in that scenario, involve them and consult them on the regular basis. This is different than getting them as your RC member. That's a very different level. I am saying at a project level, get them and get their inputs on a regular basis. That would help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ishita, 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure. I would say that a lot of industry, in fact, most of the large MNCs or large industries these days are doing open innovation challenges where they put their problems or challenges in the open domain and they do a call for startups to apply. If the researchers and academicians start looking at these kind of challenges, they would understand what the industry is looking for and perhaps take one of their technologies, convert it into a product and showcase it. That may just be an opportunity for them to collaborate or at least start a dialogue.
Sure. Thank you. Radhika?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the one way forward that we can use is definitely building more of the city science and technology clusters. We have 6 right now in 6 different cities. Let's expand that. Like Dr. Premnath said, a kind of an interconnected culture has to be developed that will promote the connections and that will give a kind of a platform for them to come. And another recommendation at the researcher level be DST has a program through SERV, that is Prime Minister Fellowship Scheme, where industry gives the 50% of the fellowship amount and rest is coming from the government. In total, it's double the PhD fellowship that a student gets who is enrolled in PM fellowship. Such schemes can be incentivization for researchers to have industrial projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Premnath, your last words.
So I thought I'll use my 30 seconds for the elephant in the room, which came up in the comments, which is audit, right? So one of the things which I want to point out and which I have learned over a period of time is that a lot of people worry when they are interacting with external partners about audit and rules and so on and so forth. One of the simple things to keep in mind is the audit checks only what you write down as the rules, right? So if you have your policies and programs written up fairly well, it is actually easier to navigate through audit. Okay, and it's not such a big problem. It's only because they don't go beyond the scope of what you have written as policies, right? So this is something which people can keep in mind. It's not something to worry about. Very often decision making is delayed enormously in many organizations. Directors are worried. The case presented to them lacks depth very often to take decisions, and they are not familiar with technology management issues. So in that context, I think it's a good idea that we spend time writing good policies, putting them in place, implementing them, putting some effort in that. And there's a lot of ways we can help. RTTOs can help. Policy institutes like what Radhika is involved with can help. Many other organizations are setting up and helping build this. So please make use of it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Premnath. And I think we had beautiful discussion today. Excellent thoughts and comments. And apologies to Savita and Ajay that we shot for like 2 minutes. But I think each word said by my eminent panelists literally counts and will go a long way in building the miles to go before we sleep. But I think there is a way forward now. Thank you very much, each of my panelists, Dr. Sinkar, Premnath, Ishita, Radhika, and final thanks to Savita and Ajay and the entire team at IRMI to putting this panel together. Thank you. Over to you, Savita.
Thank you.
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Thanks,
This
everybody.
is an awesome discussion. And Shishendu, very, very much, excellently moderated. We now actually move on to a panel discussion on CSR funding for research. And actually, all our panelists from the previous panel are welcome to stay on if you'd like to hear the discussions from the following panel as well.